And so I just wanted to put that information out there because it was a source that I would have killed for. You know, just one that very simply explains, here's what these people do, here's how they make games, let's have a chat with these people. What do they think about making games? What do they think about their job? You know, does every coder hate their life? Is it something you would actually enjoy? You know, and also there's a lot of, you know, the example of the games designer. That's so true. The amount of people who think a games designer creates stories and wonderful worlds, unfortunately, they don't really. They balance levels. They choose respawn points. They work out where the animation, the ammunition for a gun should be hidden. You know, how many collectibles they put on each level and where those collectibles are. You know, the actual story, believe it or not, in most games tends to be, oh crap, we haven't got a story too quick, let's think of something and bung it together. Because, you know, games in general come from, oh, look what I've knocked up, this is quite fun. And then it can just expand from there into, before you know it, a full game.
So the idea was to try and look at those job roles and really get to the bottom of those.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of dispel some of the myths because it can get frustrating if you spend 10 years dispelling the same myths over and over again. You know, a games tester does not play, they test. There is two different things there.
So I can imagine it's quite a big undertaking to start writing a book. How did you go about doing it? Just open up a blank page and write?
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, you learn a lot. There's a lot of different things I do writing, but again, it's a lot harder than I thought. So much harder than I thought. But the way because I decided to do these interviews and get real information from the people who do the jobs, it was kind of easy. Once I got a couple of interviews returned to me, I was like, well, I've just got my mates to take their time out to help me out, so I really better finish writing this book. Editing a book is awful. Just pay someone to do it. Yeah, it's hell. And you read your own work over and over again, it's painful. But, interestingly enough, I've had good feedback from it, which is excellent. You know, no one's actually come to me and said, yeah, your book was rubbish. Maybe we're all too British and don't say things like that. But, you know, a lot of people have found it useful and helpful. It's full of tips on how to apply for roles. You know, for instance, should you contact a recruitment agency as soon as you finish your course? Subjects like that, you know, it's designed to help people get into the job. If you do get into a job, there's a lovely glossary that covers all sort of abbreviations you'll hear in the industry on a day-to-day basis, because we abbreviate everything. TCR, TLC, Lockcheck, you know, there's so many weird little things, gold, alpha, beta, and yeah, you know, the idea is there to help people, so hopefully it's a helpful book.
One of the themes that sort of come out of some of the talks over the past few days is kind of that networking within the industry. So you said how the industry is quite small and you've met people and they work in the same team somewhere else again. How do you go about networking within the industry?
There's so many events out there. Eurogamer, you know, any place where people are showing games. There are people who make those games somewhere behind the scenes. You know, as I said, Eurogamer Expo. I think there's a couple of others. There's Nottingham Game Jam thing, Game City.
Yeah, we've got Game City. Yeah,
that's how we got contact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Game City. And then, you know, there are game jams. There's so many websites of people working together to collaborate on games, beta testing. You know, eventually somewhere in a beta test, there is a person for the company organising the beta test and running it. I had a friend who loved Football Manager. He loves that game so much. And he was on the forums all the time, you know, and he was reporting bugs quite often on the forums because he loved the game. He just wanted a better game. And eventually Sports Interactive said, well, look, we're getting the next game ready and we need some testers. Have you ever thought about being a tester? And so he got into the job that way, and because he was so passionate about the game he was working, once Sports Interactive finished with it, they turned around and said, Sega, we got a really good tester here, if you've got any use for it. So, you know, the networking just kind of organically happened. But again, you're in a position with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is brilliant. I know of quite a few groups of LinkedIn that's kind of just recruiters, companies and students. And you'll get students saying, oh, look at my latest show reel, and you'll get recruitment agents going, oh, look at these jobs we're trying to hire for. And and there's nothing stopping any of you contacting these people, finding them on LinkedIn, going, hi, sorry, you don't know me at all, but I love games, and I really want any advice I can get. Some of us, we are cool. We'll help you out if we can. If we've got the time, why wouldn't we? There's nothing at all putting barriers in your way, apart from how much time and effort you're willing to put in yourselves to break down those barriers to meet these people. A friend of mine, a guy we interviewed in the book, he's a games journalist, because I wanted to concentrate on, there's so many roles around making a game. You don't have to just make a game. And games journalist, he applied for a job and didn't get anywhere as such, never heard back, but kept in contact, kept plugging away. And the guy eventually turned around to him and said, look, man, it's been 6 months and you're the only one and you're still badgering me about this job. You must really want it. Come on in. And he's now been put in charge of the whole operation. But it's just, that determination proves for us that you are the one we have to hire.
So I suppose it is very different now. Like we were saying, you can remember when various different things were in place, like Google, and now the social media element. I can remember as well, so that's all right. But the social media element, how important is that in terms of getting a career in the games industry? You mentioned things like forums and LinkedIn. Any other advice on that?
Every CV I'm thinking about getting in for an interview, I will Google you, I will look at your Facebook, I will look at anything online I can find out about you. And so will my staff.
You worried faces now.
Well, yeah, you put it out there. It's out there. If you're not monitoring, we all have our different professional sides and our social sides, shall we say. But yeah, if it's out there and we can see it, we probably will. And how you present yourself is very important. If we have to, and I've worked in companies where people have applied and we have had to get a coder to code your portfolio so we can run it, forget it.
Yeah.
If it's more than a click or two of a button to see your portfolio, we probably won't bother. We are very busy and we've got loads of applicants. Anything you put on social networking, social media, we will probably have a look at, especially if we're serious about hiring you, because we want to find out everything we can, and an interview will only tell you so much. It's a Q&A type session. You've probably got 2 to 3 hours at best.
So it's again that sort of professional attitude. It's being aware that you could be in the next year or so, depending on what year you guys are obviously in, that you could be looking for a job within the industry, and you need to have that in the forefront of your mind, that your social media is kind of got to start being professional.
There's a level to everything, I guess, and we're all gamers. We're kind of slack. You can go to work in a t-shirt, jeans, trainers. There's no stress about sort of things like that. We don't make you wear shirts. We don't make you wear ties. We don't make you dress smartly. A lot of the time, we won't just watch the clock and make sure you do your allotted hours exactly, because it's a two-way street. When we need you to do extra hours, we'll expect you to do it. If you need to pop off early, take a little longer for lunch, it's cool, man, it's all good. But it is a business, and so we don't expect the most professional people, of a doctor, lawyer type, solicitor level, but we don't expect you to treat it like a joke, a doll's house, a playground, whatever. So it's kind of finding the balance. If you're too professional, we'll probably just laugh at you. If you're not professional enough, then you just probably won't make it. It can be a great place to work. I personally played real-life Counter-Strike in the office while waiting for a meal at like 4 in the morning, and things like that you won't get in any other job. But on the other hand, it's always the ones that are constantly like that. You just got to be aware of your surroundings. When it's time to work and work really hard and be dedicated to what you're doing. When it's not, relax. It's all good. We make games. We don't have to take it that seriously. So it's a balance, definitely a balance.
So where's the best place to search for jobs then?
There's probably about a dozen industry recruitment agents, and they specialise in video games. Google them, find them, make contacts with them. I'll be honest, they're probably not going to engage with you too well because you don't have experience. Once you have experience, they'll call you all the time, man. They'll always be, hey, how are you doing? You're interested in this potential job? And that's great. So when you can make an impression on them, it's important to make a good impression. They all know each other. They all know hundreds of people in the industry. The same way the industry is close-knit, the recruitment agency side is very close-knit. So that's a great way to start. But as I say, you probably need a bit more experience to get their attention. So how are you going to get experience? How are you going to build? Should you contact studios? Just write to a blanket. Now, I find this quite an interesting question. I've never, ever, ever got a job by just writing to a studio. Now, the last studio I was working in, when I had a tester position, I didn't advertise it. I didn't need to. I had 60 CVs on my desk ready to review from just the last kind of 8 months. So 8 months, that's 60 people who've written to me. I didn't advertise. I went through the CV, picked out ones I liked and interviewed them. So it's never worked for me, but I know it's worked for others.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you've got Google. You've got so many companies out there that are little indie studio startups that are working on their first iPad, Android game. I would very much hit those guys because they will need help for testing. They will need help in some aspect. You may be really into sound and maybe you want to make music for games. They probably need someone to come along and go, hey, would you like a jaunty little tune for your platform or whatever the case may be. The more you get involved, the more of a prospect you are for when an actual job ad comes up. Another thing I'd say about looking for work is, have you guys really thought about living in Nottingham and where you are currently? I mean, Eurocom unfortunately left us 12 months.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much left really in the Midlands. Codemasters, but they're quite away from Nottingham now. So what are you going to do? If you want to live and work in Nottingham, and there's no games companies in Nottingham, that's a problem. I mentioned earlier, I've worked in Brighton, I've worked in Edinburgh, I've worked in North East, South West London. You have to go where the work is. So where do you draw the line? Are you going to look to jobs in Europe? Are you going to just concentrate on the UK? Are you really prepared to do what it takes to work in the games industry? Because there's no way Ubisoft are moving to Nottingham.
That's a shame.
Well, yeah, but what can you do? That's life, we were having this talk, I think Ubisoft have their test house in Paris. Could be a nice place to live.
Yeah.
If we were in Paris right now having this talk, well, it would be a different thing to say, wouldn't it?
You'd have to speak in French.
But simply put, you will probably have to move house to get a job in the games industry if that's the industry you want to work in. Have you even considered that? Moving away from your family and friends, because that's the realistic nature of life. So, whatever it takes, you're going to have to almost certainly move house. You're going to have to, go to a completely new area. But if the work's there, why wouldn't you apply? Even an interview is a good experience. I mean, you touched on the person from last year who had a chat with me afterwards. And as I said, she's off to Germany. She's not concerned about location. And that's why, out of all the room full of people we spoke to last year, that's probably the number one person who's going to make it into the industry, putting out all the stops to do whatever it takes, get that bit of experience and start rolling from there.
And like you say, even an interview that's not successful is experience. The very fact that you've gone through that first process of getting there.
Yeah, and then of course, everything you can do to your portfolio, everything you can do to your CV to make you a better prospect. Get involved with beta testing. Why not? Get involved with if there's a game you're passionate about, get involved on the forum. If you really like modding, 99% of the designers I know come from test and they all modded in their spare time. And that's how they got into games design. Because modding is probably more realistic than this guy in a big chair making stories and worlds and characters. That doesn't tend to happen. Anything at all. As I say, get involved with the indie community. You help with a bit of art, you help with a bit of games testing. That's all decent experience. And sure, you may not have worked for Sega or whoever, but we will be just as interested in your experience in making it in an indie game and helping out in an indie game than we would as your 5 months testing for a publisher, say. Because a fine publisher may make a console game, but a game's a game. You probably learn more working on an indie game than you would in a big EA type environment.
Okay. So, in preparation then for getting that job, is there any further ways that students could promote themselves, advertise themselves to get under the radar of various companies?
I mean, it depends what you want. Obviously, if you just want to get in testing, we don't really require a show reel. But game design and art and animation and code, they all require a portfolio / show reel. So if you're not working on that, start working on it. It should be the absolute best possible work you have ever produced. And then take it down, critique it, and make it better. Because there are some amazing people out there. There is some truly stunning artwork on DeviantArt. Truly stunning. And, you know, if you really want this job, you're going to have to be better than all of these people all across the country who all want these jobs. You know, it's making the absolute best of that portfolio. Is that portfolio, when I've got a pile this big on my desk of CVs, do you know how boring that is to go through? Can you imagine just the same boring names, the same boring information? You know, so few can communicate their passion. So few make me stop and say, okay, this guy loves games. This guy, you know, this is the one that we want to see. So anything you can do to kind of set yourself away from that massive pile is what you're going to have to do. How are you going to catch their eye? What are you going to do to stand out a little from the crowd?
Is there a format you'd expect a portfolio to be in? Online, I assume, or...?
I would expect, in essence, I would expect portfolio to be brilliant. You want to blow these people away. You really do. But I would expect it to be incredibly easy to access. Now, if that's just a link to YouTube and it's a few videos, well, it's better than not linking to YouTube and not showing any videos. You know, if it's a bit of code, dear God, make sure it runs. Does not have to be perfect under any circumstance, you know, of course not. But if it's supposed to show your coding ability and it doesn't even load, then it shows that your coding ability is a bit weak, really, doesn't it? Take whatever you work on and you think is the best you can possibly do, show it to people, see what they think. You know, I find personally I'm quite critical of my own work, but some people, yeah, I'm great, I'm awesome, everything I do is brilliant, yeah, I'll put this in, they love it. You know, but ask around. Just because you think it's really good doesn't mean, you know, everyone else will. Make absolutely anything for your portfolio, best quality it can be, and then, even if there's no jobs available, there's nothing to stop you writing to people in the games industry. If you can find out who they are and what they do, say, would you mind having a look at this form, critiquing it, letting me know what you would expect to see on an application. I appreciate you're very busy. You know, I appreciate you might not be able to, but thanks for reading this email. And you know what? I reckon you'd probably get quite a good result from that. I mean, sure, you're going to get people saying, look, thanks for contacting me, but really I'm far too busy for such things like this. Yeah. But no matter what their response is, you're starting a rapport with these people. Yeah. You're suddenly networking, whether you realise it or not. You know, and sure, they may only spare 5 minutes, but 5 minutes of advice is better than not having that advice.
And that other thing is that background research on the company, sort of tailoring your portfolio in relation to the job or in relation to the company.
Knowing the company is key. I mean, if you apply to a job in a company I'm working for, without a doubt, I'm asking you almost somewhere in that interview process. So what of our games have you played? What did you like? What did you dislike and why? And to be honest, you know, we will value you as a gamer. You don't have to sit there and tell us a game is the best thing you've ever played just because we made it. We'll value your critique if it's just honest as a gamer. Well, I like this bit, I didn't like this bit, or I can see the market appeal, but it's not for me. You know, that shows that you're looking at it as a business and not just as a, I like games, I like first-person shooters, look at me shoot people. You know, so do your research on the company. How long have they been in business? You know, what games do they make? What is their market? I've worked for a company who had a studio devoted to kids' games. Now, as a gamer, I don't want to play a kids' game, but as someone who works in video games, you don't always have the choice. I used to use Barbie's Horse Adventure as a great example of that. You know, you're more likely to work on Barbie's Horse Adventure than Halo, Gears of War, or Zelda. And then when I was interviewing people for Cheat Mode, I used it as an example in an interview. He goes, I designed that. And I was like, oh God, really? I'd use it as an example of a terrible game to work on. But then we spoke about, as a designer, you're not necessarily going to be designing the game you want to make. You're more than likely going to be working on Barbie's Horse Adventure. So how, as a 20-something-year-old male, do you get in the mindset of a 6-year-old girl and make the game fun for your target audience? I worked for a company, and we got a contract with Disney to make a Disney singing karaoke game. And we were like, okay, not the best sort of thing we'd like to work on, but everyone likes a song from Aladdin or Jungle Book, or there's some, we could survive this. But we had forgotten, we hadn't realised what Disney is today. So there is a group of 20-something, late 20-year-old males that used to work with me. Thanks to me, they know every Hannah Montana song, every High School Musical song that has ever been. And it was hilarious to watch. It was a horrible and painful project, but it sold well, it kept the company afloat. Sure, it may not have been the game as gamers we wanted to make, but as a business, it was a very sensible game to make. I remember one company I worked for, they would take, I think, 10% of the profit they made from every game and put it into a separate account. And when that account grew to a big enough level, 4 or 5 years, 6, 7 years of games, and you've got enough money, they would make the game they wanted to make. Better company. Now, sometimes you make a game you're really passionate about and completely flop. Other times, that's how some of our greatest games have been discovered. Counter-Strike was a mod, and still sells new versions today, I believe Portal was a tech demo. I can't remember. But, it just goes to show that just a fun idea can become a huge game. But publishers value sequels. If they sell a copy of a game and make a sequel, they have a base idea of how many units they'll sell. It's a business, it runs on units, it runs on sales. So they're more likely to invest in Assassin's Creed 7 than they will in never heard of this number one.
Yeah. Do you have to be quite aware of that, or is it if you're testing or if you're working with any sort of development teams, how much are you aware about that sort of publisher idea behind you thinking about units when you're creating?
It's a business. You start off as a passionate gamer, and you learn to adjust to the business world you're in. Like anything else, it comes down to budget, and it comes down to staff and resources. I always tell my testers when they start testing, don't make any suggestions, please. Just save yourself the embarrassment. Because as a gamer, you can probably come up with great suggestions to improve the game. But guess what? Anyone can do that. That's not hard. You can always improve the game. The problem comes in where you don't look at what your suggestion causes, the cause and effect. It could just be a simple addition, but if that addition requires animation and new art and code to drive it, you've just taken 3 people off their jobs for a few weeks, and then we've got to test it. I say to testers, wait 2-3 years, understand it's a business, understand what people's jobs do, and that's when you can make little suggestions. It might be a text change or the way a game plays, but those little suggestions can drastically improve the game. I remember I was working on this game in Scotland, and it had these mini games in it, and beat the clock, you get X amount of kills, things like that, race against time, and you'd get a gold and a silver and a bronze medal for completing each sort of time objective, kill objective, whatever. Now, I remember I was testing away, and I noticed that if I got silver, I didn't get a bronze, and if I got gold, I didn't get a silver or a bronze. So if on the first attempt I got a gold, I would then have to play the same challenge, do worse to get the silver, and worse again to get the bronze. So if I'm a completionist, bad design. So I went over to the director, and I was like, well, if you see this, it's like this, and we should do it. If you get gold, you get bronze and silver. He thought about what I said, and he goes, well, in the Olympics, if you get gold, you don't get bronze and silver. And I was like, well, yeah, but this isn't the Olympics, it's a video game. Why would you want to have to do worse just to get the bronze and the silver? If I did the very best possible on my first attempt, just give me the medal. I'll have a think about it. And he came back to me the next day, and he goes, thinking about that? Yeah, really. And he goes, we're going to make that change. It's a good idea. I was like, yeah. And we made that change. that's a simple change. It didn't cost us anything. We just changed how game unlocks the medals at the end. But it improves the game. Now, it may not be a massive improvement, but it's a slight improvement. It makes the game slightly less irritating. And, as a tester, you're putting yourself in the game chair, and you're saying, is it really annoying to pull out this crucial inventory item? Is it really hard to get to the map? As a gamer, can I traverse the menus easily? Can I do what I need to do to continue playing? And so the way you look at a game, the way you approach a game, it does change when you become someone who works on games, rather than just someone who consumes games.
Yeah. We touched on it a couple of times, but you mentioned the CV, so we talked about portfolio and the importance of that portfolio in whatever area you're looking at. But the CV is obviously a written format. Have you got any sort of do's or don'ts on a CV?
Trying to kind of promote cheat mode, I wrote to, I think, every university offering every games course in the country. That was fun. And one of them was like, well, we want to read it first. Okay, reading, I suppose so. And they came back to me, and this woman, she goes, well, it seems all right, blah, blah, blah. But you mentioned putting humour in your CV. I would never advise putting humour in your CV. Right, really? I would. Blah, 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 blah. And then she goes off on one like I'm a bloody student. And I was just like, well, look, you know what? You've never worked in video games, clearly. You've never sat there with 60 CVs on your desk. If you go through 30 CVs in a row, and then there's something in there that makes you smile, that's the one that's caught your attention. And that's why I said use a bit of humour in my book. Now, I may be wrong. I'm sure perhaps EA and Sega and the real big boys probably would frown on it. But speaking solely as a hiring manager in a dev house, we're all human. Something that makes me smile will make me smile, and that shows, if you're probably smart, you're probably funny, you're probably more of an interesting person than the last 30 CVs I've just flipped by. So, she might be right, don't use humour, but I might be right. Maybe a little joke, maybe something a little smart, just to catch their attention. It doesn't have to be a 4-line joke, but something that might catch our attention is probably better. Now, working in Scotland, we got this CV once, and this CV, I swear, it was crazy. Like, this guy, he was talking about his rats, his pet rats, and how people don't really like him, and he struggles to make friends, and then probably more about the rats. It was just really weird, man. And I was like to my boss, this guy's nuts. He's like, yeah, this guy's nuts. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I know. Let's get him in. I was like, okay. And so we got the guy in, and literally all we cared about was, dude, what is going on with your CV? It's crazy. Why? What? Why? What? And he just goes, got your attention though, didn't it? We were like, he's smart. I mean, honestly, I would not advise writing about pet rats on your CV under any circumstance, but he was right. He got our attention, he got him the interview, and he got the job. And it was a bit weird.
How long did he last in the job?
Well, actually, he wasn't that great a tester, to be honest. I remember definitely having to have a chat with him further down the line about. See, some testers struggled. I mean, I met this guy at Sega, and this guy, he was a nice guy, but he couldn't for the life of him test. And I've never worked harder with a tester of mine in my life, and I spent weeks and weeks working with this guy. Basically, his main problem came from he had seen so many little problems in games as a gamer. He just thought that's the way it was, and that it's just acceptable. Now, there's something that always annoys me in video games. I wonder if they truly fixed it. I don't really pay much attention to it before, but certainly in the last generation of games, if you look at characters climbing stairs, you'll quite often see their feet sink into the stairs. It's a very minor graphical glitch, and the reason behind it is all stairs in video games are actually just slopes, and we just stick a stair image on top of it, and change the animation of the legs, and it's just matching the leg to where the step is, and it's not that big a deal, but to fix it, it's a bit painful thing for such a small minor issue. So a lot of games have this issue where you'll sink your feet into the stairs, and in essence, he would see something like that and just go, well, it's acceptable. Now, I always did really well in games testing because nothing's acceptable to me. As a gamer, I wanted better. I just do. It's just never good enough. And so I worked so hard with this guy to help him identify what is a problem that you should report, and what isn't, and what is, just the game itself, and the mechanics of the game, the way games work, the restrictions of the hardware. We worked really hard together. We worked so hard together. And he finally got it. And I couldn't be prouder of my boys. He went out busting arse, getting loads more problems than anyone else in the test team. Brilliant. And I left the company because I moved on, and he stopped and left. I couldn't believe it. I worked so hard. And as soon as I left, he lost all confidence in himself. But for that brief period, he was a great little tester. But it's being able to identify again, what is a problem, or what is just the way it came to you. It's an interesting kind of question.